Thank you guys for being here tonight. It means quite a bit to us, both CF Mission 43. Introduce, maybe, if my microphone's working. Can you guys hear me okay? You can hear me anyway. I'm pretty loud. It's one of those weird things. But hey, thank you for being here, and I want to introduce our speaker of the night, a retired Staff Sergeant, Marine Corps. We knew that was coming. Come on with it, Marines. Come on, roo, rah, roo, roo, rah. All of it. Get it all out of your system now, because you're going to hear a lot of it. Either way. But we have former Marine Staff Sergeant Jesse Cottle as our guest speaker. Come on up, Jesse. Well, take your time, bud.
I know. Should have worn my running legs.
Thanks for being here, bud.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we pride ourselves here at Mission 43, and it's been a while. It's been over a year since we did our last 43 Inc. speaker session. So just so you know, we probably haven't told you this, but we pride ourselves on hard-hitting questions here. Are you cool with
ready.
that?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Is it true that you faked losing your legs just to be taller? I mean, we saw videos of you before when you had your normal legs.
Yeah.
You were not as tall as you are now.
I was like 5'10". Yeah.
Right. So is this a big scam? I mean,
You got
people
me.
want to know. We want to know. This is just because you got blown up in Afghanistan serving our country?
Yeah, this was not part of the prep, so...
No, it was not. Okay, well, we got you there. But either way, I'm curious, Jesse, like, if not to jump into it completely, but I'm curious because I have a limited experience in the Marine Corps. My experience was getting in trouble and bouncing between E3 and E1 for a brief period of time. Yeah. But I would like to ask you, like, what type of person joins the Marine Corps?
Yeah, well, I think, as a lot of us here know, it takes a certain person to sign that dotted line to any branch, certainly. But the Marine Corps, as a lot of us know, is a unique entity.
It is.
Requires a small degree of derangement, probably.
It's a group of hyper-focused, very weirdly aggressive and intense people. Yeah, it's unique.
Derangement in a good way. Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
No, but I think it, at least from my standpoint, when I was looking at it, I had a little bit of a guidepost, if you will, in that my father was a Marine in Vietnam. Yeah. Yeah.
Let it out, Marines. Come on, bro.
You're not doing it right.
Oh, sorry.
No, so, but even that being said, he still wanted me to visit all the recruiting stations, see what all branches have to offer. But, when it comes to, the type of person, I think, you don't join the Marine Corps to go to college, or because you don't, most of the time, just because you don't really know what you do. It's a very unique mentality that you join to...
To be fair, some people do join the Marine Corps to go to college, and they find out quickly. That is not the right path.
I chose the wrong...
For every young person out there that's thinking about joining the service to get the GI Bill, good for you. Don't do the Marines unless you want to.
Yeah. I think you join to become something else entirely.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You become something else. And the Marine Corps is one of the only branches of service that doesn't allow you to join to be an explosive ordnance disposal person. You have to do an entire enlistment period in another MOS or military occupational specialty before you're allowed to volunteer and test and become a person that finds IEDs with your hands. So, I'm curious, what did you do in your first enlistment, and is that what you had pictured?
We use robots sometimes.
This is awkward.
To be fair.
Thanks, man. Sorry, he's touching my face here. It's weird.
That's an Army thing.
Yeah. I'm very okay with it.
Yeah.
I respect everyone.
Of course you are. No, EOD, and to be, jokes aside, and bringing the Army into the picture here, Air Force, Navy, is, I loved that it's a joint MOS, or joint occupations. We had all 4 branches. But yeah, you're right, we had to, at least in the Marine Corps, you have to re-enlist into it. Something about like a 18 or 19-year-old EOD tech doesn't sit well with us, so we re-enlisted into it, or I did. But yeah, my first 4 years, I was a comm guy, radio operator.
Nerd.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be the first
Who
to
said
tell
that?
you. Yep.
Guys, come on. This is a family deal.
Yeah, keep it. But yeah, no, and that was, technical skill. I deployed, to Iraq in that occupation. But as far as EOD, it's just very specialized. I think EOD techs, at least in the Marine Corps, accounts for about 0.4% of the Marine Corps.
Which already, like, you look at like 0.145% of the country serves during the GWAT.
Sure.
And then of that, combat is like 0.00144. So yeah. And then EOD of that is 0.00 something else. What makes an EOD, like, what made you want to do that? Because that sounds terrifying to me.
I was getting toward the end of my first deployment. I was on my 3rd tour in Iraq, and it was getting to that point. It was like you re-enlist or you're going to get out. And there's just still plenty in the Marines that I hadn't done. So I wasn't ready to get out, but I kind of wanted to change jobs. So EOD piqued my interest. We had a small 2-man EOD team out at the small FOB in Iraq where I was, and I was able to kind of go on a couple calls with them and ask them questions, and I don't know, it just really spoke to me. It was almost kind of like the initial calling, pardon me, after 9/11 that I felt to join the Marine Corps in the first place. It was a similar sort of feeling I had about EOD.
So when did you actually join then? Before 9/11 or after?
No, a couple years after, 2003.
And was that the catalyst for your decision?
It was pretty significant. I won't say it's the only thing.
Sure.
But it's one of those where it's.
Your dad was a Marine in Vietnam.
Yep. When you grow up with a Marine dad, it'll always cross your mind. But once 9/11 happened, a catalyst for sure. Had a neighbor that was a couple years older than me join the Army, actually, and saw him come back from basic, and he knew he was going to deploy, and just the pride that I could see in him, his family, and just the selflessness.
And yet you made fun of him because you knew you were going to be a Marine?
Not yet, because I was like a sophomore in high school.
Okay,
so couldn't make fun of anybody.
He would crush your little soul at that point, but still.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I probably would have touched my face or something.
Apparently that happens in public too. We don't know. I'm curious though, so your first 3 tours in Iraq, like, did you have the life and death, like, combat experience during that time?
Not usually, not so much. I was on the FOB the vast majority of the time. My second tour, I had a job where we did leave we call it the wire, but you go outside the base and go around to different places because it was part of my job. But I was not going out and getting into firefights and going where IEDs were. It's just not what my job. We supported the wings, so that was just not my occupation.
Right.
The biggest thing we dealt with on those deployments was IDF, indirect fire. So you just get mortars, rocketed, missiles, rocketed. Yep. Not missiles, rocketed. I'm EOD. So but yeah.
I'll speak slower for you.
That's kind of the biggest thing. And there were some close calls, but it wasn't until re-enlistment, EOD, and then who we supported in Afghanistan that changed a bit.
There's not a lot of folks here, probably in this room even, and this is a unique room of people, but most people didn't deploy 3 times to Iraq. And most people don't deploy 3 times to Iraq and then say, you know what? Like, I really didn't get into the real stuff that I wanted to. Let me volunteer to go through a year and a half pipeline of EOD explosive ordnance disposal, just where you get abused. It's academic and physical hazing throughout the entire time, right?
Yeah, you could go back to the derangement piece, but
I will. That's where we're going.
yeah.
All these questions are about derangement. Yeah.
I think between seeing how that team operated and just the importance of their work, I think that's what it was. The IED game was really hurting us. And it just seemed so crucial and so important. They really needed people. They really needed guys. It's what they called a critical MOS. And again, it just kind of called to me. So but the feeling that you have, like, well, I can re-enlist and try to be an EOD tech, but it's the attrition rate is there for sure. So, but I made it through.
It's high, and I probably should have said this before, but I think you guys know Jesse's story. That's why most of you are here. But throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about his experience of being blown up in Afghanistan and of those things. So if that is triggering to anybody, we'll show a couple clips. There's nothing graphic or anything, but just let you know, that is going to happen. So do what you need to make yourself right. And I'm curious, Jess, when you made this transition, and 2009 was your first deployment as an explosive ordnance disposal technician.
That's right. Yep.
And you're an E6 at this point. You're a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps.
E5 when we went, but
okay.
Yep.
Just an E5.
I know.
That was a joke. Sorry. All right. So here we are, and you're in Afghanistan, and you're in Nowzad. Can you talk to us about that experience? Did you feel added pressure? Was it different than your previous deployments?
It was entirely different. Just supporting an infantry unit, where their primary job is to go out and I don't want to say pick fights, but you're trying to find where the enemy is, where are they not, what can we do strategically, where are the IEDs. I mean, that was their biggest mission, at least at that time.
Their job is to close with and destroy the enemy.
Yeah,
and that can be
exactly
a harsh
right.
thing.
Exactly, and someone who came from a non-infantry.
Yeah.
I mean, every Marine, you get a certain degree of training, but if you're an infantryman, you continue on that line. I had not yet. Now, the EOD workup I did for months in Okinawa, Japan, and in 29 Palms and places like that, it helps you get ready, certainly, but it was mostly for the EOD side of things and operations and things like that. So that I was very fortunate in that one of my team members was a grunt, was an infantryman before, so he was super helpful for someone like me trying to get a quick crash course into being a reasonably decent infantryman, because we were embedded on foot with patrols and with the squads and stuff. So so when you ask about how I felt, I felt like I had two steep learning curves. I'd been trained up, I got through school, went through the workup for the deployment, but it's still your first EOD deployment.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and then the learning curve of not embarrassing yourself on foot patrol or during a firefight or just things like that. So that was immensely helpful. But there was a lot of uncertainty. It was a Nowzad, which is in Helmand Province, southern Afghanistan. In 07, 08, 09 was a pretty tough place.
Yeah, it was a horrible place, just riddled with pressure plate IEDs. IEDs are improvised explosive devices, in case you're wondering. But how is it that you're talking about feeling uncomfortable because you want to make sure you prove yourself, but you're also the dude that's attached to a unit that when someone like me is a former infantryman is like, oh, that's scary. I'm not going to touch that. EOD, come on up.
EOD up.
Hey, poke your face and hands around this IED, I think is bad. And tell me what happens. And you guys are like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. It's not funny. It's
kind of funny.
Interesting, I guess, that just like anything in the combat realm, it's intimidating. You have all these feelings going into it. but do it for a little while, and it's remarkable how fast you can become desensitized
Yeah.
to it, to the action, to horrible things happening to those around you, but it's similar with EOD work and interrogating a possible IED. You know, your first time doing a real one, not, you know, non-training scenario.
Yeah.
It's a crazy and phenomenal feeling, but you know, you half of the time you're in the middle of a firefight, and it's not very long before you're just kind of numb, and it's just business as usual, and you just there's somewhere in the way back of your mind that you're kind of like, I hope nothing bad happens, but you carry on, and you get a bit desensitized to the danger, to the feeling of it.
Certainly. How old were you in 2009 when you had your last trip?
24.
So you're 24 years old. You're a new E5 sergeant in the Marine Corps, new EOD tech, and did you ever consider your own mortality? Like, this is different than your previous 3 trips to combat zones, like combat deployments to Iraq. Like, did you ever think, like, holy, like, I might get hurt here?
Yeah, and you know, going into it, the feeling was there because Nowzad was already well known for being a rough spot by the time we got there in early '09. So there was that. But then, you know, you jump right in, you know, and you one mission at a time, and you know, I think going into it, you can never fully prepare, you know, as much as we prepare, you can never fully prepare yourself. But I think, again, it's part of, you know, it becomes business as usual. You kind of become desensitized, but that same friend that I had on my team that had been an infantryman, his father was also a Vietnam vet, and he had, you know, struggles with PTSD and would always hold everything in and not talk about it, and it would always get, you know, and he always had such a problem. So he and I would, you know, we didn't smoke, but we would go to the smoke pit and we would just kind of unload about maybe a mission or a close call or something bad that happened, and just get it out, because I think we were both a little bit afraid of we didn't want to become like that, but
Your experience was informed by the wartime and post-wartime experiences of your fathers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think, you know, putting myself back there, you know, considering mortality, probably every day.
So the build-up versus the big day, I guess. I mean, and I'm going to show a short video clip here, if it's okay with you. You're not going to see anything graphic, but you will hear an explosion and kind of see what it's like and see the chaos that happens in something like this. It is intense. So just let you guys know. But for you, the build-up... Thanks, Chad. He didn't even touch my face.
I know, I was going to say.
It's weird. Chad, come back. My face is...
No, he's Navy. That's like even worse stuff.
I know. Junior enlisted swine. They won't ever touch my face when I want them to.
We're getting off track, Dan.
Oh, sorry. It's supposed to be the emotional part. But I have a feeling it might be anyway. I want to show this because I think that many people don't actually recognize what it feels like, I guess, what the experience of being in an explosion is. And I'm curious for you, that day when you went out, did you have a feeling? Because, like, we talk about that a lot, and dudes like me, like, I feel like I knew when things were coming. Did you feel like something was coming?
I had days where I did have that feeling, but I'll be completely honest with you. That morning, I didn't.
That was not one of them.
I did not. Nope. That was an early, before sunrise op. You're out the wire. You go in bed. You wait for the sun to come up, and then you go on with the mission. And did not have a feeling that morning.
So an easy peasy lemon squeezy type EOD patrol, and now Zed Afghanistan.
Yeah, at least out without that premonition, without that feeling.
Oh, I'm
Because I
telling you,
definitely had that, and it was right sometimes, as I'm sure you've experienced. But
Well, if you guys don't
that
mind,
morning.
just play that first clip, please.
I'm all right.
God damn it! Pat, are you alright?
I'm all right.
Come here, come here, come
I'm
here.
all right.
Come back to me, come to my voice, come to my voice.
All right, man.
Okay, just relax, hey, relax. I'm
All
gonna
right.
check you out, alright, bro?
I'm good.
I'm gonna check you out, okay?
I'm good.
Where you hit? Does anything hurt? Give me your hands.
Cottle! 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 Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, guys. Quick! I got it. Oh, fuck. Jesus.
So there's some strong language there. It's an intense moment. When they're saying Cottle, that's you, Jesse Cottle, because you weren't the guy on the video that had the helmet cam that was digging. You were the guy that walked past your teammate that was digging on the same path to continue clearing, and then you stepped on a pressure plate. I'm curious, like, for some people in the audience, I think, that might recognize this, like when everyone has a different experience of being blown up. I know that sounds really weird, but to those of you guys that know and women that know, like there is this weird thing that happens to some of us that time stops almost and it becomes silent and it goes into slow motion. And for me, every time I got blown up, I saw dust move. Just briefly, and I was like, oh shit. And then, and it comes back to life. I'm curious for you, what was that experience? Because it's not your first time being around explosions as an EOD guy on your fourth trip there, both Iraq and Afghanistan. You're no stranger to explosions at that point. What was the experience for you in that moment?
Yeah, and it even just hearing it certainly brings me back. You're exactly right. I mean, it's just utter silence. And when I had been close to some blasts, but I mean, obviously you can't get much closer than that. And yeah, it's silent. And I remember being high in the air. I mean, I was because there was no roof or ceiling, but it was just these thick, those mud,
walls,
the parapet walls, and they're a good 9-10 feet, and I was looking over one of the walls into the next compound in the air, came down, but completely numb, no pain, and I immediately just thought the whole thing was a dream, and I was asleep, and I was waking up back at our hooch. That was my first. I said, "Oh gosh, what a vivid, bizarre dream," and hopefully that's not indicative of our next outing. Like I had enough seconds to actually really think that, because it's not you. And again, it's all the dust around you is so thick you can't even see your own hands. Quiet, like you're coming out of sleep, out of a dream. And I don't know how long it took for me to kind of start to realize, and the dust settling and starting to vaguely hear some sounds around me that no, indeed, I was not dreaming and I was not in my hooch. So.
At any point during that, like you thought it was a dream at some point, but was there a thought that, oh my God, I might die?
Yeah, pretty much immediately when I realized
It's not a dream.
that, yeah. But maybe not immediately because I remember my first thought after realizing, okay, oh no, I remember now, we've been out, and I've obviously either been struck by an IED or maybe we had bad issue with RPG teams over
Yeah.
there, so they,
Yeah.
try to ambush and stuff. And so
Rocket propelled grenades that they shoot, and it's
shoulder fired.
quite unpleasant.
Yeah, very. So I had actually kind of worried that we were being ambushed.
Yeah.
I had been taken out by that, and that there was a firefight that I just couldn't hear because
Yeah.
everything was muted. So that was my first thought. But I'm like, okay, I can't see what's going on, and there was the crater or the blast crater that my legs were kind of just in, and I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't see what was going on. I couldn't see. I was like, hopefully it's just a bad, like they're banged up, but hopefully, my legs are okay, or, maybe just one leg if I have to miss. I mean, these are the things that you start thinking of.
Absolutely.
But I kind of reverted back to my training, and I fished out my my tourniquet, and even though I'm still numb, no pain, I'm oddly calm. Even though these thoughts are going through my mind, I'm oddly calm. Shock was involved certainly, but even though I'm calm, I'm doing this, trying to fidget with and by then, that's when my team leader was like, Cottle, 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 and he ran over. So all of that transpired in that short amount of time.
Yeah.
From the blast to him running over to me, and he came and he looked down and he looked at me and he started talking to me and he got his tourniquet and I was like, okay, so I'm missing at least one leg. And then he was calling for another tourniquet, and I just gave him mine, and that's when I knew it was both.
Did you, I guess at that point, have an idea that your life is going to be different, or is it just in the moment like, holy hell, like this is happening?
Mostly the latter. I think at that point, I had helped more servicemen than I like to recount with their traumatic amputations and putting tourniquets on them,
Sure.
and coordinating the medevac and carrying, that being on the other side. And sometimes they're obviously unconscious, but a lot of times they are conscious. Like I stayed conscious, and they're talking to you, they're doing okay, you get them to the vehicle, that they get to the helicopter, they get back, and every few hours they'll give an update like, oh yeah, he's in surgery and this, and it's promising things.
Yeah.
And it'll be, and then 3 hours after that point, oh, he didn't make it. He lost too much blood, or he got an infection that they couldn't fight in time. So we had a lot of experiences getting our hopes up that, you're fighting tooth and nail to get them, to save them and to get them out of there, and then getting positive updates only to get, so when you're the one being, they're getting the litter out, the stretcher, and it's like, well, if I'm lucky enough to make it to the vehicle, and then if I'm lucky enough to get to the helicopter, if I'm fortunate enough to get it, and then if you're fortunate enough to make it, obviously, so my thoughts drifted upward pretty quick.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think you are like me. Your dad was a Vietnam guy. My dad was a Vietnam guy. And like, I'm going to speak for you, but I think we've talked enough that like Vietnam was way worse. There's a lot of Vietnam guys here right now, right? And women. Way worse than anything we went through. But at the same time, this IED game of the GWAT, this improvised explosive device game, whether it was mounted, dismounted, pressure plate, remotely triggered, it was a bit of a deal for us.
Yeah, no question.
I'm curious, like for you, what thoughts went through your head, if any, about that exact moment when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, now I know 2 tourniquets are coming, so it's both my legs. Like, did you have any thoughts about the enemy or their actions at that point?
My biggest thought regarding the enemy was they would wait for you to get your vehicle, especially, but whatever. The chaos of dealing with an IED and then wait until you start to respond and then ambush you. I was so fearful that one of two things would happen. Either we were going to get ambushed in the chaos of trying to care for me, which that comes with a big feeling of guilt already. Right. And then secondly, that during this and getting me out of there, it's someone else stepping on IED and all of us getting blown up. Like, suffocatingly afraid of those two things. Very close after it happened. Right on the heels of that was, I had like 50 pages left in this book that was like 1,000 pages long. I'm not joking. And it was like, I was like, I'm not gonna know how it ends. Has anyone read the Stephen King book? Can you tell?
It's the little things that matter, apparently. It's true, though. Your mind goes to weird places, and if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to play one more video clip here, and it's Jesse's teammates getting him out of that little narrow alley to the medevac site, the medical evacuation site, and I have some questions after that. If you guys can play that second clip, please.
Are they both below the knee at least? They're both below the knee. All right.
The whole time we were rolling, he kept asking us how high up did he lose, or how much of his leg did he lose, or what did he still have his knees? Yep. And what that was casualties we'd taken, guys that had stepped on IEDs before in Nowzad. Usually, if it was below the knee, they'd survive. Guys that got it above the knee had a much worse rate for survival, or less of a chance for survival.
Hey man, you'll be all right, okay? Come on, just hang in there, okay? Hey, good, you're doing real good, all right?
All right.
Trust me, brother, you're in good shape, okay? All right? Hey, you know I'm not gonna bullshit you, all right?
I hope not.
Yeah. You guys good?
Hey, make sure I got my pack.
Talk to me.
Yeah.
They were, you know, I was just looking around, and I still didn't feel pain yet. Everything was just numb. Everything, my whole entire body was numb. And I just saw, you know, 4 Marines, one on each corner of the stretcher, just sweating and running and trying to do the best they can to get me quickly to the vehicle. And, you know, all I could do was really lay there and kind of cheer them on, you know, tell them to keep it up.
Hey, we're coming.
You guys are doing fucking awesome, man.
Yes, you're the one that's doing awesome, man. You're on your brother.
Long way to fucking haul my ass.
No, I'd haul you fucking 3 times before.
There's some things there, Jesse, that I guess I have some questions about, because I think for some folks in the room, they might have an idea about this, but one of the things that's not directly pictured or captured on the audio is that you repeatedly apologized to the dudes, your dudes, that were carrying you out. You were saying, sorry you have to carry me, sorry I'm so heavy. And I'm curious, like, can you give these people, those, some that know and some that don't know, like a perspective on what makes a young man or woman apologize after volunteering to do this job, getting blown up, and then being medevaced, and at the point of near death, to apologize to their teammates for having them carry you out?
I think having been part of some medevacs and being honored to be a part of them, but I think that just the feeling of, you know, that whether you make it or not, you're leaving your team. You're leaving them there. You're leaving them behind. They're going to have to carry on. And you know, and that particular, we had been out 5 or 6 hours, and I think, you know, and we were about to return to base, and people can get hurt during medevacs. I mean, I couldn't do anything to help other than try to motivate them, or apologizing for it again. That's probably just stems from a feeling of guilt.
Did you feel like you didn't do enough at that point? I mean, you stepped on a pressure plate IED trying to clear a path for other Marines, and that wasn't enough? Like, you still felt...
The Marine Corps mentality, and then even more amplified, arguably more so in EOD, is you don't want to be the weak link. And I say that because anyone getting hurt, of course you're not the weak link, but it's hard when you're, for years, have that mentality driven into you. In my experience, it made me apologetic.
I'm very comfortable being the weak link. I think every team member that I've ever served with here is very familiar with that. Did you feel any anger in the moment? Did you feel any regret? Like, what emotions did you have bubbling up? Were you pissed that this just happened to you? Were you angry at the enemy? I don't know, did you have any resentment?
Absolutely. Again, in those earliest moments, my mind hadn't gone there yet. But, as the figurative dust settles in your mind, and, maybe now you're part of the medevac, you're in the vehicle, and you're getting to, you have time, and the pain starts setting in, and you have time to kind of start just the most early digestion of what's going on. Yeah, I think feelings of anger, I think resentment came later, but just pure, I don't want to say hatred, but it was a very pure anger, because I'm being taken away from my team, I'm being taken out of the fight, and it brings up all the emotions of other service members during that deployment, and during any time that had been hurt or killed, or absolutely.
How did you deal with that, being moved from Nowzad to whatever, Kandahar probably, and then I'm guessing Germany, and then Walter Reed or something like that?
Those earliest days were so many surgeries, anesthesia, in and out.
Vague memories, I'm
a
sure.
lot of pain meds, a lot of in and out of sleep, and
Well, then when did you realize that you were actually going to be a person without legs?
I think it really started setting in when I made it back to where I did my inpatient recovery, which was Bethesda, Maryland.
Bethesda, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The first time that I really woke up and had full awareness and could look down, see, under the blanket, but see the end of my limbs, my stumps, what have you. And really just, I remember putting my head back down and like, okay, this is the first time that I'm kind of fully aware. And I was a little bit afraid, honestly, to be alone.
You don't say, after losing your legs?
I guess what I meant is I was a little afraid of being in the room by myself. And, even before that, I think that I knew that at some point I'm going to have to fully think about what this means for my life. I think I had some sort of subconscious feeling of that. So when that day came, first day after arriving, I was a little bit afraid of being alone. But at the same time, there's not much I could do. So I think I just kind of again, said a lot of prayers, and but there was just so much uncertainty, though. I mean, what I was planning on, at that point I had re-enlisted. I wanted to come back and, apply for a program to go to college, be an officer, and then fly. I wanted to fly something. And that you're obviously looking at a whole career then. So that was my path that I had set out for myself. So when something like this happens, I mean,
Changed dramatically, I imagine. During that time, did you ever have, like when you look down, whether it's under the sheets or over the sheets, and realize that your legs are not the same as they were? Did you ever have a feeling of like, why me? Did you have a moment of self-pity? Because I stubbed my toe this morning and I'm still pretty pissed about it. Just saying.
it's nice to not have that problem anymore.
All right.
I mean it. I hate stubbing my toe.
Yeah, I know. It's horrible.
It's the
way worse than
worst.
anything you've been through, obviously.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it's the
No,
worst. Yeah.
No, I think, so when I would feel the feeling come on, because it's inevitable, I would argue for anyone, you're gonna have that thought, you're gonna have the feeling. I was very bound and determined to not go down that path. I kind of essentially saw it very early on as two choices, two paths, right? There's a dark path that's gonna lead to places that I didn't even want to think about or explore. And there was the path where you basically, I made the conscious decision to choose life and to choose, not letting my circumstance define me. And it's not like, I mean, it definitely took time, I think, to fully realize that path and what it means. But early on, I really recognized that there were two paths, and I was pretty adamant about choosing.
I like how you pointed at me when you were referencing the dark path. You don't want to do that. What I want to do is what I did. I'm like, yeah, it's true.
I got nothing. It's your dark jacket. I don't know.
In that moment, like, can you tell us a little more about like what spurred that moment where you decided not to be a victim, where you decided like what was the catalyst for that? Like how did that happen?
Yeah,
how does it happen to the rest of us?
It was the feeling, exactly what you say, mixed with so self-pity, why me, anger, and feeling of guilt. My team is still there, still have a couple months left.
Yeah.
What are they dealing with? How much harder is it being one man down? All those feelings, and I quickly saw how you could spiral. You could.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I think it took a lot more time than those very early couple days to fully realize what that meant. But I think those feelings that you mentioned just made me realize, that this is going to be a choice. There's going to be hard days, no doubt. There's going to be dark days, but
Yeah.
But I don't want to choose that as my MO.
This happened very early though. Like I'm talking very early, like when
Yeah.
you're at Bethesda / Walter Reed, which now it's combined, so sorry I say Walter Reed, but Bethesda, you're there and you meet a physician assistant and you're like, oh, how do you do that? Spark, right? Mm-hmm. Like at what point did you realize like, okay, what point did you make the decision and say, all right, I don't have legs, I'm gonna move on? Because there's that decision, the early decision that says, I'm going to be a victim, or I'm going to be like a productive veteran, a member of society, and do great things.
Yep.
You obviously had that choice very quick. But when was it, it's like, oh, I'm going to start exploring my new life?
That was some weeks, I think, because I was.
Oh, weeks?
I was,
oh, jeez. It took you a couple weeks. Oh, my God.
I mean, I didn't. Maybe I
speed
didn't
it
know
up here, bud.
exactly what I was gonna like pursue or do, but I think it took weeks to really know and decide that I had really high ambitions and challenging goals in the Marines. It doesn't mean that I can't have those exact same things not in the Marine Corps. And that feeling and thought was motivating to me. I was also very blessed with an extremely supportive family. Friends, God played a huge role for me in my faith. So very blessed with those things as well, because I'd be remiss to not mention those things. They were massively impactful for me throughout my journey. But
So it took you all of a couple weeks to decide you're going to be a designated badass for the rest of your life. And at some point, what I've heard is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I heard about 5 months after your injury, 5 months, you were at Balboa Naval Hospital in San Diego, and you decided to take a group of other combat wounded folks to a Division I collegiate women's swim meet.
I was invited.
By who? You were invited?
Yeah, Kelly's parents invited me. They
Oh.
didn't know what they were getting into, but they invited me.
All right. Well, I didn't know that aspect, but still. So you went. So there's a bunch of cool dudes with new legs and awesome things, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, I just got blown up in Afghanistan. No big deal. What is your boyfriend doing?" He's a freshman in college. Like, yeah. And but you went to this Division I collegiate women's swim meet. Not a bad choice, bro. And you met someone there. That was a decision that had some pretty significant impacts on you, yeah?
I sure did, and it sure did. And I'll just share too that when it came to the thought of dating, love, those sorts of things, because I said the thing about the book, and that is true on one of my earliest thoughts and regrets, but during my medevac. But the other one was I never got to become a husband, a father, and experience that. Those were massive regrets for me. I struggled with that in those very early moments and first few hours, not knowing if you're gonna make it. You can make it from the medevac, but do you fully make it, or So that was a very big thing for me. So when it came to, okay, I fully made it. Thank God, and I'm incredibly blessed that that's the case. But will anyone want to date me? Will a guy who's and at that point, prosthetic legs were far off.
Sure.
But assume if I was lucky enough to walk in those, and be sometimes you're in a wheelchair. Is that something that's going to be attractive to anybody, or is it am I going to still be able to sweep the girl off her feet when I don't have feet? So it was a big thing for me, and meeting Kelly at that swim meet,
Well, to give you a little break here, I will say that you made the decision to, as a 5 months out from being blown up and losing 2 important pieces of your limbs, you decided to go to this women's college swim meet, and you forged a relationship. And that relationship is with someone that's not like you, is not normal, and in a good way. Not like he's weird. He's kind of weird, but so is she. Either way, they're not normal because they're above average. They're people that have these remarkable qualities that don't exist in normal life. And with that, we'd like to invite Kelly Cottle to the stage. We did this in rehearsal. I'm pretty sure her accent is fake, but either way, Kelly, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dan, for wanting me to be here.
Oh, now you're trying to hide it, but yeah, either way, So allegedly, she is a native South African. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's like
She
a
is.
specific thing I've really committed to.
I'm just curious, as like a Division I swimmer, like you go to this swim meet down there, I'm guessing it's a conference deal, San Diego State, and some of the old Mountain West classics.
Yeah, it was our training trip because we all had to still be here training when everyone else was at home for Christmas break. So they would take us somewhere warm, and they took us to San Diego, so University of San Diego.
And at that time, was there like a Tinder thing that said, I'm looking for recently wounded combat Marines, or?
No,
Oh.
or at least not that I was aware of.
For you, as a native South African, like, did you have any idea, like, the culture that exists within this weird, it's a subculture of a subculture of a subculture, especially the Marine Corps, and then of that, the EOD of the Marine Corps? Did you have any concept of that culture?
No, I really didn't.
So you just jumped right in.
No, I didn't.
So, sorry. You did not jump right in. Okay, so you're a D1 athlete. You're competing in this event, or at least training in this event, and then you meet a dude who has bionic getaway sticks, i.e. legs. You know, these little things, getaway sticks. And you decide, this is who I'm going to spark conversation with.
I mean, yes. I mean, I didn't, okay. For reference, my mom knew Jesse's mom in Arizona. And so that was kind of the connection of
This
why
whole story
Jesse,
is destroyed.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, we'll turn off the lights now.
Illegitimize Dan's story. I didn't know anything. I had heard through my mom that a friend of hers son has been injured in Afghanistan, and I was like, oh man, like, but I had no connection to them at that time, beyond what most people have. It was just, that is so unfortunate, but you can only understand to an extent, right, when it's not personal to you. So at that point, so I had no idea Jesse was coming to my meet. You talk as though women's swim meets aren't like really great and a huge draw. They are.
Yeah.
They're not. They're totally not. But I remember like we were warming up and it was a meet and my teammates were like, who's that guy? Because he had like 2 canes and his prosthetic legs and he was sitting with my family and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. And then I was like, I wonder if it's a... So like, it was totally unexpected for me.
He kind of stands out.
Yes.
Ambush.
Yeah.
Ambush.
Strategy. So yes, no, it was a very unexpected thing for me, and it was something very different than anything I'd been exposed to before. So.
At one point, then, I guess Jesse, for you, as a hyper masculine EOD Marine Corps dude, like for real.
I'll take it.
I mean, not anymore, but at that time, right? Like, at that time, you were a Billy Badass, right? And then you get wounded, and then you're like, okay, things are very different. How was your confidence level? You talked a little bit about that, but like, you go to this swim meet, and then it's like, oh, all of a sudden you have this, you know, like come up to you, and it's like a force of nature and Kelly on her own.
Yeah.
And was that a concern for you, or did you just go for it?
Oh no, it was a massive concern. Not necessarily for Kelly individually, but just
Yeah,
just for
everyone, all the swimmers. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, just you know, it's you get in trouble.
I was joking. Sorry.
No, just with kind of what I kind of alluded to earlier, is how am I seen now? And like yes, like where my confidence was. It's not where it was. Certainly. So I think that a big thing that I think a lot of people go through when your life changes that drastically is what's my view on people that use prosthetics or wheelchairs or whatever? Like, what's my own feeling, and is that impacting like my fear about how people view me, and especially when it came to girls, and again that underlying fear is is there anyone out there who is gonna want to be with me?
Isn't that a crazy thing though, that you, Kelly, damn near everyone in this room, like, has such great respect for people that are going and overcoming, permanent physical disabilities, but at the same time, if it becomes us, that becomes scary.
Yes. Yep. No doubt about it. Kelly has a way of, I think, putting people at ease. She certainly did with me. So, when we met, I had a little moment in time where I just kind of felt like I was, I don't want to say not injured, but just it was almost like a momentary escape when I met her to just feel like it wasn't part of that. She was just meeting me. And yeah, she made me feel very, very good.
Well, it's pretty damn remarkable. I would say, Kelly, from your perspective, as this awesome college athlete, all these things, like, what was your decision point to say, like, this is going to be something more than just casual? Like, this is going to build into a relationship?
Yeah. It was a process for sure. I mean, I remember meeting Jesse that first day. Obviously, it was just like, oh gosh, this is something I'm not familiar with. So it was a lot to take in. The next day, he came and met my teammates. It was our last day there, and he came to dinner with our team. And I remember he took a taxi over from the hospital to come and join us. And I don't know, just the whole evening, I was just struck by his ability to just make everyone else, like you say, I did this, but he made it so easy to look past his injury. It wasn't a thing. He overcame, I would have been scared to do half the things anyways, and he just made it seem like not a big deal, and that made everybody else feel comfortable around him.
This is 5 months out, dude. You're making everyone look bad here. God damn it. All right.
And I honestly, it took time, because at that point in my life, I was not seeking a relationship. That was not something that was on my radar. But I remember saying goodnight to Jesse when we dropped him off there, and I just was like, okay, I know that this is a different situation that has struck me because of the situation that he's in, but there's something more here. And I started to just have this feeling where I was like, I don't think he needs me, but I want to be there because I want to make things easier for him. Not because he needs me to, but I just want to. Like, I had this feeling, and it was like hard because it was not something that I was expecting or, had on my radar, like I say, at all. But it was like, it just became this feeling that felt so clear to me that the least I could do is be there to make things easier for him in some way, if I could possibly do that.
How did you guys know, or when did you know that this relationship was escalating to the marriage realm? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, right. I realized pretty early on, well before I would ever ask someone to marry me,
Sure.
but that's where I wanted it to go, and that was the biggest thing in my life that mattered. I felt that very strongly, fairly early on, probably embarrassingly early on, and but I think once we had been together long enough to see, I think you get the feeling where it's like, man, I can't live without you. So that's kind of what did it for me. Anything to add?
It's a two-part question. It is for both, yeah. These are both questions, so Jesse's was extremely romantic and made me tear up a little bit. So Kelly, go ahead.
Conjure up, no.
Yeah.
The whole thing was a process, because it was just something so unexpected, and it was this whole time of our lives, and it was a lot. But I do remember this very clear moment where I was hanging out with Jesse at his apartment, and he'd said something outrageous, and we were laughing. Like, really smart and outrageous.
Yes.
But
Right, very
we were
smart.
laughing, and I did just have this clear moment of like, I don't think there's anyone else that I could possibly want to be with. And it was just like this weird, clear moment for me. Certainly there's a lot more emotions and things surrounding that, but I do remember having kind of a clear moment of just wasn't a question anymore.
Well, that is remarkably romantic, but if we can talk about like some of the practicalities and some of the hard questions, honestly, like you guys are both from unique backgrounds, right? Like you're barely an American citizen, Kelly.
But I am one.
You are one. Yeah. That was a joke. She had to take a test that was way more complicated. I studied history in college. I have no idea. So, sorry. It was amazing.
It's much harder, as it turns out, to do it from the outside. But
It is quite interesting. And then Jesse, I mean, you're a man that has experienced combat trauma. You've lost limbs in combat. So it's not a normal situation. Was there a consideration at all, or any considerations of like, hey, if we do this, this might be harder than normal for like average people that are just doing the normal marriage experience? Was that a consideration at all? Whether it was getting married or starting a family?
I will quickly say that, from early on, even just being, wanting to be a solid boyfriend, or, in being able to protect her, and being able, if something goes down, can I still, all these insecurities that, sometimes you can feel as a man regardless, but just, certainly very heightened. So when it comes to especially thinking about being a husband, hopefully someday being a father, that sort of thing, can I be there for them in the way that I need to be and that I want to be? Again, she always made me feel very comfortable and at ease, and I feel like she helped squelch any fears that I had with that. But those were still feelings. I mean, absolutely. I always think of that, and I'll let you kind of speak to it, Kel, but that conversation that you had with your dad, because I think that was very poignant.
yeah, I mean, nobody really can feel fully prepared for, especially marriage. I mean, you kind of have an idea, but you really don't know what's coming. You don't know what you're preparing for. I think probably if there's a big thing that I learned through my life before and through immigrating and through the difficulties that presented to me as a growing person and as an adolescent, it gave me, I kind of learned how to walk by faith and to not know what was going to be next, and to know that even if I couldn't see it, there was a plan. And so I think that in that way, that my experiences in my life, if that's unique or at least a little bit different, I think that they prepared me in a way, because I really didn't know Jesse didn't know what his life would look like. Like, I didn't know exactly what that would be, but I knew who he was. And I, despite his injuries, and I think back now and I kind of wonder, like, how did he not let his own insecurities or his own concerns for his future burden our early dating? Because I know that couldn't have been easy, but he never burdened our relationship with it. I know that he dealt with those things, but he presented just as who he was, and he shared some of his struggles, but really I don't know how he did it. Like, he just was himself. Like, it was like he was so aware of how his situation impacted the people around him. I felt like that was a driving force, and that's just who Jesse is. Like, he's thinking about how this is affecting others, and how this is going to affect his parents, and how this is going to affect his brother. And so it's the same with our relationship. I felt like he didn't want his situation to affect us or to affect our relationship, and it is a big thing. And so I did get to have that choice. Like, it was a choice that I made because we met afterwards, like we've talked about before, and I did have a conversation with my dad about it. And he said, this is an extra challenge that you'll have in your relationship, and either it will break you and it won't work, or it's something that will create a depth and meaning to your relationship that you wouldn't have without those extra struggles. And I just remember that so clearly, and that's absolutely been my experience, is that it does require more of us. But when you can walk through those low points together, like, you can get other places that mean so much more. And it's the same with anybody who goes through anything difficult. Like, if you can walk through it together, and if you can have the vulnerability that Jesse's had with me, and we can support each other, and I can seek to understand his situation, like, we get to do that together. And that's like a vulnerability and a responsibility that we wouldn't have without his situation. And so that's a blessing to me. It's difficult in other ways, but it's been it's like made me such a better person than I probably would have been without that need for that challenge too. So, so much of it is just how he's dealt with his reality that's allowed me to come alongside him and really not made it difficult at all.
Now I just feel both empowered and also very jealous that you had a dad that gave you that amazing advice. My dad is somewhere in the audience here, and his advice was like, does she talk a lot? Where are you, Dad? You're here somewhere, I don't know. But you took it, and you did that, and you also talk about the vulnerability aspect, and that is actually something that I'd like to talk about, if it's okay with you guys. Like, there's levels of vulnerability. Like, being married to someone, that's a level of vulnerability. You open yourself up in all different types of ways, you do that thing, and then there's being married to someone that, I don't know, let's say is a combat veteran that has some things in their bucket that make things different. And then there's combat wounded veterans, that people that are living, and then let's just say disabled or otherly able people that, like because of their experiences being shot or blown up or whatever else, or it doesn't even matter, but like I'm talking specifically veterans now, like that requires a whole new level of vulnerability. You guys went viral. I don't know if you guys are aware, but they have this viral TikTok of where Jesse was on Kelly's back. Was that right when you guys got married?
It was a year after.
Okay, a year after, all right. Yeah, so old maid here was carrying Jesse, and it became a whole thing because the husband was on the wife's back and she was carrying him, and Jesse doesn't have, full legs, and it became this big deal for you guys. But I'm curious, that takes a level of vulnerability to another level, because like it's not just a husband and wife sleeping in the same bed. It's a husband and wife sleeping in the same bed, and the husband does not have a full pair of legs to get up and respond to whatever, the caveman instinct is at that. So like, how have you guys navigated that level of vulnerability?
I will say, I think, at least from my standpoint, is I realized pretty early on in our relationship that if I chose to be stubborn and not, as you say, vulnerability, so not vulnerable, we would just be able to do so much less. If I didn't let her help me across the sandy beach to get to a spot, then we just wouldn't go. Or when she wanted to go horseback riding, and I was immediately like, oh man, what if I get thrown off? What if I this and no, and not but then we did that together, and it was amazing. What if, or any sort of scenario that we've been able to do, because again, it goes back to having a choice. I realized very early on that was going to be very important.
Well, now I want to marry you, Jesse.
Will you
Talking about like, yeah, I mean,
will you carry me, Dan?
I'll carry you anywhere, brother. But like, yeah.
Oh gosh, should I leave?
Let me just quickly say that Kelly has made it exceptionally easy to be vulnerable, which is huge. If I didn't feel like I could be, I probably wouldn't. So.
Well, that takes a special deal too, because the key aspect of vulnerability in any successful relationship, especially one where you guys are raising the amazing family that you are, takes a special degree of accepting the responsibility of those truths, those responsibilities, and then never holding it against the other person. Kelly, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think that's the key, and I think it's true for any marriage. I think anybody here who's married or is in a relationship can understand that give and take, and it's such a delicate balance, and it's such a responsibility, and that's how I've viewed it. Like, I remember like one of the first times we hung out, we were at the beach, and I was like, I'm gonna go swim, does anyone want to come with me? And Jesse's sitting there, and he's like, I'll go. And he did not have to do that. And he scooted his way down the beach, and he like fought through the waves, and we swam. I ended up having to like tugboat him back to the shore. Like, it was difficult for him. But the fact that he still wanted to, and he put himself in that vulnerable position, like thinking back just early on, like he did that for me. Like, and what a response, like he did not have to do that, and he chose to do it. And so I just had this feeling of like protection over him for that. And then it's been just a life, our life together is that. It's like knowing when to support him, when to push him, understanding, his struggles, wanting him to share them with me, but realizing as a man, as a husband, like those are vulnerable things for him to feel, and for him to feel weak to his wife. Like, I would never want him to feel that way, but I want him to share. And when he does share those things, like you say, like I have a responsibility to respect him and not ever exploit those weaknesses in him too. And that's like hopefully what makes him feel safe. And I feel like everybody should have a person in their life that they feel safe to be vulnerable with, because that's how all of us grow. That's how we learn from each other. That's how I can know what he's dealing with, and I can better support him. And if he chose the safe route of not exposing his weaknesses to me, I wouldn't know how to support him properly. And then our whole family would struggle. We would both of us would not grow, and we would not become better, and we would not become better supports to each other. So I think it's such an important thing in any relationship, in a friendship, anything. But I just have always admired Jesse's ability to be that for me, and I take that responsibility as such an honor. And if I can learn to support him in the best way possible, then that brings me so much fulfillment in my life too.
It requires a lot of both of you. A remarkable amount from Jesse to give that, and then a remarkable amount for you to take that and thrive with it. I don't know how, I guess, like, how do you balance the role of caretaker and spouse? Because that's a hard role. Like, if you get too much into one, it can affect the other.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm asking because there's a lot of folks out there that are definitely
Yeah.
balancing those roles as well.
Yes. I don't know. I think it has to be done a little bit differently than just a caregiver. Like, you're a caregiver, but you also have the emotional vulnerability of being a spouse. And so it's been a learning process for us, but it's so much his attitude, Jesse's attitude, and his choice not to feel like a victim, and his choice not to sit. And I guess that's part of it too, is like, when you do have to sit in it sometimes. Like, I think that's, like, if anything, Jesse hasn't sat in that very much. Like, he's just been, like you say, like, driven, goals, what's next, what can I do, what can I become, like.
Yeah.
And so on the other end of the spectrum, I've had to kind of be like, you've gone through a lot. Like, this has affected you in ways that maybe you don't even realize, and that's okay. Like we should figure that out. And it's okay to sit in that a little bit and recognize and respect these experiences, but then learning, like, how long do you sit there before it's too long? And I think that's the case with everybody. Like, you don't want to stay in that space, but you have to spend enough time there that you can understand how these experiences have impacted you immediately, and how they've impacted you as you go through different phases of life, because it's constantly changing. Like, the challenges are constantly changing. And so how do you learn and pay enough attention to your own emotions that you can say, oh, this is not normal, and maybe this is why. And how do I learn when those moments are where it's like, maybe this is not normal, maybe we should take a minute here. Like, it's a give and take. And again, that takes Jesse being willing to share his feelings with me. And when I ask, he can share, we can reflect, we can work together. Like, it's such a learning process, and it changes and evolves. When you have kids, you have different struggles, there's different challenges, there's different things that I have to learn about myself. Like, I don't ever want him to feel like the extra things that I take on are a burden to me. But I also have to realize sometimes it's a lot, and that's okay, and that's my problem, because sometimes because I don't want him to feel bad about things that I may do, I don't allow myself to feel like it's too much. And so I've had moments in my life where somebody's been like, are you okay? And I think I'm okay, and then I'm like, I'm not okay. So I think just both parties recognizing like when it is too much and seeing it in each other, and that's just marriage in general. Like you love each other, you are first seeking to be what that person needs. As long as both people are doing that, then you can be that support.
So we have to share our feelings?
I know, Dan, it's hard.
And I'll be the first to say that doesn't mean that 100% of the time I just share them right. Sometimes I regress a little bit, but
There's all the feelings like hunger and anger. That's it. I think
Yeah.
hunger and anger.
But when you asked the balance between caregiver spouse, I have always appreciated the way that she walked that line, because I appreciate, and again, it's part of being willing to be vulnerable, at least as much as I can, and her helping when I need, but not overstepping that line either, right?
Yeah.
Because like she said, being one role dominating over the others in either direction is not good. But I have just always really appreciated the way that she still lets me do the things that I can, for her, or for myself, or for, But again, that takes me being willing and be like, hey, can you help me with this? I can't do that, or So there's a balance there that I think is super important.
That's a lot. And I'm curious, as a person that has a marriage and divorce resume that would rival Britney Spears, I'm curious to know from you guys, like, what is your special sauce in, like, raising this beautiful family that you have and maintaining the relationship that you guys have?
Love and respect.
Is there anything else that I could do that's easier? Like, besides that, is there an app or a drug or something? No? Okay, love and respect. Got it, Jesse. Thank you.
We'll talk about the drugs offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kelly, what about you?
Yeah.
I think it's just a commitment. For me, I feel like the reason marriage is hard sometimes is because it necessitates both people becoming better versions of themselves in order for it to work. And that's like the blessing and the curse, right? It's not easy all the time, but I think it's not supposed to be. Like, we're supposed to be able to pull each other up when they need it. Everybody needs that, and you have to know when to and how to, and you learn and you become better, and you both have to become better in order to make it work. Otherwise, it just won't. It's so easy for it to not, because it's kind of this really difficult, impossible thing. But if you put in the work, if you don't let the little things grow and fester, and Jesse and I both are so blessed to have incredible examples of wonderful marriages, and so I know that gives us a head start. But I think it's just accepting and knowing that it's not always going to be easy, but how you choose to communicate, how you choose to treat each other, what you expect from yourself and each other, like those, you both get to become better versions of yourself through that. And I think that's like the most wonderful thing about marriage, is the hard things and the valleys. They make all the other things so much worth it. If you can walk through those, you have that foundation, you can enjoy the peaks together.
If there was one thing that each of you could offer to the public, I guess, that your partner is too humble to share about themselves.
Ladies first.
There you go. What is it? Like, what is something that your partner is too humble to share that you think that everyone should know about Jesse, Kelly?
I think Jesse's like obviously he's dealt with a lot, and other people have dealt with even more, and I think he always constantly feels that way. I think that he truly is somebody, even before any of this has happened, like, he is truly one of the most kind, huge-hearted people. Like, he always looks to others first. Like, he always thinks about the way that something's impacting someone else around him, and he truly, like, I'm married to him. I have been for 13 years. Right? He doesn't feel sorry for himself. Like, he can have hard days, but he truly has never gotten into the space where he feels sorry for himself or feels a victim of his circumstances, like more so than I do. And I've learned to become a better person because of him, because of the way that he sees other people and thinks about them before himself. And so I think he's probably one of the most humble, driven, kind people on earth. And maybe you would say this about yourself. No? And I get to be a part of his sphere, which has made my life so much richer than it would have been otherwise.
Dan, I should have gone first.
Just make something up.
No, Jesse, you're not off the hook yet.
I know, yeah. Definitely should have gone
Now
first.
it's your turn to share something that you think Kelly is too humble to share that the public should know about her.
I think her courage and her adaptability stand out to me. She moved to America when she was 10 or 11. Different from everyone else. She sounded different from everyone else. She had to, and I moved in 3rd grade, like 40 minutes, so she's moving from halfway around the other side of the world. And I think it made her stronger and certainly a part of who she is, but the way that she has just lived her life despite that, she puts up with me. And I think the kindness that she shows everybody while, and again, the way that she has adapted to me, my circumstance, and to just her own circumstance throughout her life has been very motivating for me, and incredible. And the love that she shows me, and our three kiddos here. It's just, I feel beyond blessed every day. Thank God for her every day.
Well, go ahead. I don't have the words to describe how thankful I am to have you guys in our Mission 43 Fieldhouse CAF atmosphere or universe, but I will say that I do believe that the world needs more humanitarians than it does warriors, but it can have none of the former without the latter. And you guys are this rare combination of both. Some of you have fought, and one of you has fought in actual wars, and the other one has accepted all the consequences of that, and that's very freaking rare. Both. I think that you guys are a remarkable example of what this country could and should be, and I'm just so thankful to have you guys here, and I'd appreciate if you guys thank them appropriately for sharing their stories tonight.
Thank you guys.